have such sights to show you.
We're Poppin the Scary Horror Podcast here. I'm your host, Coale, and with me, as always, I have my good friend and co-host, Aaron.
Hello.
Hello, Aaron. How you doing?
Spectacular.
Ah, great,
Yeah.
great.
It's a lovely evening. Bewitching, even. Quite.
Yeah, so we're watching The Vitch, or The Witch.
Vitch.
I don't know, it's so weird because it's called The Witch, but clearly how it looks, it's like The VVitch there.
Yeah.
And whenever you try to type in The Witch, it doesn't really pull up The Witch, so it's one of those special titles there.
Yeah, it's definitely a special title.
Yeah.
It's trying to be all, what is that, like Nordic or some shit? The old English where they use the V's?
Probably so anyhow. I'm guessing you probably don't know anything about this film?
No, not a goddamn thing. I know you're not really supposed to startle the witches in Left 4 Dead 2.
Yeah, they'll mess you up.
Yeah. But you could just walk up with a shotgun and like pump if you're on like normal or below.
Yeah, crowning the witch. Yeah, if you're good.
Yeah.
I was never quite good at it. I think I did it once, and I couldn't believe I actually did it because I had failed so many times before.
True. But I'm guessing this has nothing to do with Left 4 Dead zombie witches.
No, I mean, in all honesty, I'm kind of going in blind as well. This is like one of those films that was recommended by a friend to watch, and he gave me a copy of the DVD to watch there. It's been about like a year or two since I've had it. Yeah, so I need to like work through my list of films I need to watch, and so
do that to your friends, Cole.
I mean, I would feel only a little bit bad if he didn't also have a pile of stuff he's borrowed from me.
I was about to say I'm making that joke partially because I borrowed Frankenstein from you, and I still haven't given it back.
Well, clearly I have been losing sleep over it, Aaron, so hurry up with that. But yeah, with The Witch, I don't know too much about it. Just, it's directed by Robert Eggers, who directed The Lighthouse. I haven't seen any of his other work. I know this one came out before, and that it takes place kind of what it looks like around like the early 1600s, you know, Crucible times, stuff like that.
Salem witch trial witch kind of business.
Yes, and I remember seeing a teaser for it once, and the teaser doesn't really give too much away, and so I am very curious, I guess is the best word, to see how exactly that all goes and all that stuff. But I mean, aside from that, don't have any expectations. I am a little, I wouldn't say like scared or anything like that, but I am on edge. I'm like, okay, what is going to happen with this film? Because with the teaser, it was definitely discomforting, like watching it, and they didn't really show you anything.
Oh, that's how you know they're gonna get you.
Yeah. That's exactly why I'm on edge there. But yeah, I mean,
cool.
Man, holy cow, we don't have any context. We're both flying in blind here. So y'all stay right there and don't go away now, because we're going to be right back after we watch The Vitch, whatever the witch.
W's, V's, I don't know.
The whole alphabet.
Let me tell you, in my experience, only two kind of old ladies can move like that. Retired Russian Olympians and witches.
You see that right there? That's a parabola. Now only a witch can pull up a parabola of this nature.
We got back watching The Witch.
We watched that.
We did. We did do that, and it was what I expected and not expected, but what I expected, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can flow with that vibe. It was man, tagline in this movie is a New England folktale. A New England folktale it was, but you ever think about old fairy tales and you're like, wow, that'd be really gruesome if you actually saw that in real life. Well, you would be right.
Yeah,
grinding up babies and
Oh man, yeah. That's why, again, I'm coming at this with not the usual, and we are just back from watching The Witch. I'm still reeling it in a bit.
Yeah, it was shocking, unnerving. Yeah, this horror movie is not much of a jump scare ooga booga. There's the monster kind of horror movie. It's definitely an unnerving, disturbing, gruesome, just designed to make you uneasy and terrified in that sort of way, not necessarily the spooked kind of way.
Yeah, and I think Robert Eggers definitely delivered that tone. I was definitely on edge. And it's funny because I feel like right now, where I'm currently at with watching films, that kind of slow burn horror gets to me more than just like, again, the cheap jump scares kind of thing.
Oh, I'm 100% with you. Yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, the cheap jump scares still get me, but they feel, like I know what's coming, and then they don't get me afterwards or whatever. But this is a movie where it might be like afterwards, I might be thinking about it. You know what I mean? Like, ooh, this is a real, I don't know. It was an experience.
Yeah, I think that is more than fair to call it that. So I guess we might as well talk about the plot and everything. And basically, The Witch is about a family that is kicked out of a community there. And so then they have to go kind of build their own settlement there where they're able to sustain farmland, have a place to live, everything else. And again, like Aaron mentioned, it is very New England-ish, earlies, again, like I mentioned, it has Crucible vibes. It's definitely in that era there.
Right, yeah.
And definitely the beginning definitely probably has the biggest jump of what is going on there. But the rest of the film just continues just to have a slow descent towards the end of the film there. But I mean, I feel like story wise overall, I mean, there's nothing too much to complain. It's just a family that's, again, living on their own in the wilderness there. And again, I mean, you've mentioned this before on previous podcast episodes, but it's like this during this time period where it was just kind of common, where there's nothing much else besides nature and your religion.
Yep. Yeah.
There.
Yeah. I mean, religion's huge to this story, but also just to the time. I mean, I'm pretty sure this family were Quakers, and they were kicked out of the. It's hard to follow because it's written in period piece times, so it's it's like you're reading the Crucible or the Scarlet Letter or something. It's that style of English. And without subtitles or something, it could be hard to be like, what the fuck are they talking about? But from what I gather, I mean, they were kicked out of the plantation for being too religious in the 1600s. They were Quakers, essentially, and they were like, yeah, you guys are banished because you're being fucking weird about it. And so they're out living on their own. They're the type of people that are praying days and nights and, and fasting and doing all the religious extreme stuff for the 1600s. But yeah, it's important to note that, in this time period, whenever all you do is farm and barely survive and, your kids die because infant mortality is terrible, you gotta have something to be like, wow, life is worth living, or why would you keep doing that? And to these people, it's God. God is holy, we must toil away and suffer, because if we do that enough, then we may be allowed to go into heaven instead of rotting in hell. But spoiler alert, some of them go to hell. In this movie.
Oh, it does. I mean, it's surprising because, like, in one way, they hold back their punches, in another way, they don't. I feel like it is so weird how Robert is able to toil that line back and forth of really pushing the envelope, but not like, going over the top. Because in all honesty, I was expecting like a lot more over the top, considering especially the lighthouse definitely had random moments where it was just major random images of like tentacles and everything like that. But this film definitely, it was very, very underlying. Like, a lot of the times, both Aaron and I throughout this entire film were just like, oh no. And nothing's really going on. Like, just, if we were to describe just the scene without the underlying context and the vibes and everything, it's fairly just normal, but it's just that big suspenseful underlying tone there.
Right. And it is in between moments. I feel like early on they kind of show you just how horrific this film could be.
Yes.
Just specifically so the rest of the film you're like, when's the next one of those coming?
Yeah, that was surprising because that, like, the first, like, 15 minutes, it feels like you get a sucker punch to the face, and I'm like, is this going to be the whole film? But really, it's not. I mean, they have some shocking scenes and everything, but it's never quite to that level there. But
Right.
I think that's what kind of also made me get a little more suspense, because I'm like, what the heck's gonna happen next? Like, if that was shown in the first 15 minutes of the film,
Yeah,
what does the
else?
rest of the film pack in,
Right.
basically? But I mean, overall, I felt like the film, even though there wasn't a lot going on, it continued the pace fairly well. I feel like,
Yeah.
you know, it did toil a little bit there, but I think, you know, like I said, watching The Lighthouse, it did definitely take its time a little bit, but you're just taking in that ambience and the
Right.
characters' vibes and everything.
Yeah. I mean, this is only the second movie I've watched from this Eggers fella, but I mean, it seems like more so than maybe some other aspects of cinema, he really phones in on like the atmosphere. You know what I mean? Which is really important. The scene, the setting, the mood, all of that is like seems to be the focus, even more so than the plot or the characters or something. And there's nothing wrong with that because the plot and characters is good still. But the focus of that and the focus of the lighthouse or whatever is the mood, the style. You know?
Yeah, and that's one thing I will definitely talk about. The mood and style, I think, is one of the absolute highlights. I think Eggers is very good about nailing both just emotional tones as well as environment tones. I mean, it's just it's really good. And of course, if I can go out of sync of what I normally talk about, I'll feel like I'm just falling apart. So I'll talk about the characters,
Yeah,
because
let's
the
have some structure.
characters, you know, there's really, I would say, probably about 6 characters you focus on the entire time, and that's the family itself. Of course, the lead actress being Anya Taylor-Joy, which I didn't even realize she was in this film. Again, I didn't even know about her until the Super Mario Bros. Movie announced that she was going to be Peach. I didn't know who she was.
You didn't watch the Queen's Gambit?
I did not watch the Queen's Gambit because I'm terrible at chess.
Well, I'm terrible at chess too, but it's a good show.
You could beat my butt in chess. I guarantee you dollars and donuts. I will put money down.
I know what
will
the pieces
lose.
do. As far as I get.
And so she plays Thomasin there, which she's like the eldest daughter of the family there. And for the most part, it focuses on her there. And I felt like she just absolutely killed it. It's crazy to think she was like 19 or something like that at the time of shooting there. And she's really good with like her silent moments there and talking amongst her family and having to take like a huge vast array of emotions there. Like I was very much connected to her and hoping everything would be okay for her.
Yeah, she's a great actress, and she has that gift that Hollywood is all about right now, which is having a weird little shrew face while still being really attractive.
Oh my god! Holy hell! Oh my god!
We're all thinking it. She's got that like Tilda Swinton quality. You know, they're just like, wow, you look fucking strange, but that just means that I'm staring at your face. And then she does things with her face, and you're like, well, there's emotions.
Oh my god!
She's like an attractive alien.
Yeah.
That's why, I mean, like, anything, you type in Queen's Gambit right now on your computer or something, every poster is her just, like, staring strangely into the camera, because they know how to milk that weird pale white woman face. Anyway, that's Anya Taylor-Joy. She's great.
Yeah, she's great. She's super great.
That's the one thing that they're really missing in the casting of her as Princess Peach, is that it's animated, so it's not going to be her face.
Oh my god, Aaron. Oh man.
These are all positive comments.
Yes. All right.
The watchers at home, the listeners at home, they agree with me.
I don't know about the face thing. I understand where you get to with that.
Just look at her face. The very first opening shot of this movie is a close-up on her face. They know what they're doing. She's got like a weird little like Whoville-ass face. You know, it's cool.
I'm glad you really enjoyed it, buddy. And I can't say your points are wrong.
This is cinematic analysis. Hollywood loves weird little Whoville faces.
You heard it here, folks. Exclusively from Aaron on Poppin the Scary Horror Podcast. True Faces Sell. She's really good, and it's with this, I feel like you don't get like you don't really like know a lot about the characters, but you understand kind of their ideology and where they come from and how they feel about certain situations. So it's kind of weird that, again, you don't get like a crazy like background stuff, which, again, I think in The Lighthouse it was important because, again, it's literally just the two of them on an island talking to each other there. So you have to have some sort of back history there. This is just kind of more focused on just like their beliefs and their struggles they're going through at the current moment. And like I said, she does a good job of just kind of being, for the most part, the perspective the audience sees the most. But secondly, I'd probably say we see the father, William, played by Ralph Ineson, and he's also really good. He's really good because, I mean, he's kind of like the one that ended up being the person that chose to leave the colony. Like, he was the one that conflicted with the colony itself there. And so he heads out, and again, he's trying to be the provider, one holding the family together and everything. And I feel like the writing is so good about the characters dealing with certain situations, and the fact that they could have easily just made him like a hard ass completely there, but he's like that, but he's also sympathetic as well. You know, like, he cares about his family. You could definitely tell, and he's going through all these emotions because you know, light spoilers, they don't have a good harvest going on whenever they first moved out, and so they're definitely on troubling times, and I think it's like even like winter showing up or something like that.
It's like, it seems like they're heading into winter. Like, it seems like they just harvested their corn or whatever, and the leaves are not on the trees anymore. And he's chopping a lot of firewood, and he's like, "We're not gonna make it through the winter," you know.
Yeah, and so but at the same time, you know, you could tell he's a father trying to like do his best there, and you know, he is religious, just like the mother, Catherine, played by Kate Dickie.
Another typecast.
Yes.
Strange faced women's, but she has like a typical Puritan face, so they slapped her in there.
Yeah, she definitely does a very good job of just kind of being more of, I mean, I would probably argue she's kind of more of the hard ass than the father is typically, because she's the one like freaking out more about stuff.
Got like a Catholic school teacher vibe, you know what I mean? I'm not just being mean to women today. This is if you guys don't know, the actress that plays Robin's mom, the Callan's sister in Game of Thrones. That's who we're talking about. The one that. You know, she breastfeeds the kid when he's like 13. She's like typecast to be in weird roles. So I'm not being mean here. Okay?
Yeah, controlling mothers.
Yeah, that's her career.
Yeah, and she kills it. I mean, she's also
awesome.
really good at it. Again, I totally buy it exactly. And so, you know, there's a lot of strong performances from a majority of the cast there. Even the younger brother of Thomas and Coale, played by Harvey Scrimshaw, also does a pretty good job there.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, and it's funny because they do a couple of character decisions with him where he's focusing on certain aspects of his sister there, and you're like, where is this going? And surprisingly, it does lead to something. It's not just random fart from Willem Dafoe in The Lighthouse.
Right. Yeah, Robert Eggers is good at sneaking in those, like, what I would consider artistic moments, you know? Like, if this was being debated in a high school English class, they'd be like, why did they make him make the curtains blue or whatever? Like, why is that important? It'll be one of those moments. But it's real literary, you know? He loves to sew in little symbols and stuff and then, you know, poop them up later, but nothing that's like... He does that. There's a, I don't think the spoilers, because it's such a minor thing. He does that with the talk of the silver chalice too. That they do something with that I can't reveal. But then later in the end of the movie, that that appears in a critical moment just in the background. The silver chalice, and it's just like little symbol moments, things that you feel like you're reading the fucking some old ass poem or some shit, and it's like, oh yes, that's why they put that in the movie. But,
yeah, and I feel like it's just very well done because again, I feel like these are not easy roles to take, I don't think, and yet I would say the 4 of these actors do an excellent job. Like, I believe exactly who they are and their will to survive there, just both, on an actual like natural survival thing as well as like family matters whenever it comes to that, because especially how religiously charged the father and especially the mother is there, and so he does a good job just trying to be an intermedium as well to be close with Thomason there. I will say, and this is obviously no no slam dunk critique or anything, but I'd say some of the weakest actors are the little kids Mercy and Jonas. But again,
even they did a pretty good job.
No, they did a good job.
They're like children, like 4 or 5 or something.
I think the thing is like the way they're written, they're just going to be causing a lot of crap.
They're little chaotic twins,
but they did a good job still. That's like no critique there.
Yeah, it's just children be character actors whenever they're like 4 or 5. Like, they knocked it out of the park.
For sure. And so with that, I didn't have too much to say, but again, Aaron hits it correctly. It's a hard, role to fill, but I feel like they do a very good job with it. So yeah, those I would argue are the main characters. You do see other characters like in a colony, and then slightly spoiler alert, you do see other people later on there, but we'll talk about that later. But I mean, overall, I feel like the characters are very well done. I mean, we even talked about in the Lighthouse. I feel like Robert Eggers again has a way of just building these characters there, because Robert Pattinson, Willem Dafoe's characters in the Lighthouse, very grounded, defined, and again, I mean, they just had outstanding performances. And again, I think Robert Eggers' acting is true still in his previous film, The Witch, there, where the 4, but I will give all 6, did an excellent job with just telling the story. I never once thought okay, they're kind of hamming it in or anything like that. Like, no, they are acting their butts off.
Yeah, and really challenging roles. Yeah. I it's interesting that both this movie and The Lighthouse kind of deal with isolation. Like, that's the setting of both of them, is like, because there's, for this movie, they've been banished, and so that's where a lot of the conflict comes from. Just like in The Lighthouse, the majority of the conflict is just they're stuck on this island with each other or whatever. But the majority of the conflict here is they're kind of stuck out next to the woods because they've been banished from their colony. They don't really have a way to get help or whatever, and they have to deal with not only problems involving perhaps a witch, but also dealing with their family problems and their heading into the winter problems and all those things.
Yeah, no, that is totally understandable. Oh, we can't leave the last family member, which again, it's hard to judge acting wise because babies are babies. But yes, there's the little baby Samuel.
There is a baby
who, I mean, he's a baby.
He does a great job.
Yeah, I believe that Samuel believes he's a baby. True. In that role.
Honestly, of all the people in the cast that I would have expected to have a full frontal scene, the baby wasn't one of them. But
oh wow, yeah.
But boy, there is one.
Yes, boy howdy is there one. And I feel like even though it's towards the beginning of the film, I just feel like we can't talk about it now whatsoever. And yeah, I think
a lot of uncomfortable scenes in multiple
holy
ways.
Cow, is there? Oh my gosh!
Not just in like gruesome ways, but in like I would really not want to have to explain what's going on in this scene to somebody walking in.
No, it's definitely one of those things that we'll obviously warn you about spoilers, but we'll even warn you now. This movie, if you are fairly you easily get uncomfortable during a majority of movies there. This is probably going to rock your world in the worst way possible there. And it's not to say that it's like bad innately, but it's like if you're not prepared for it, because it doesn't even get you with like, you know, it gets you with psychological horror, I would say, where it just
Yeah.
screws with you a lot. I mean, granted, there is some graphic scenes where it's like, holy cow, but surprisingly not as graphic as what I was expecting it to be. But you know, and I think the thing that makes the psychological horror flare up really heavily is, again, you mentioned it, just isolation in itself. Like, you just feel alone in this. And even the woods, which that's one of my favorite things about this film, is the environment, the setting
Yeah.
there, just them in a little plot of land and then them walking through the woods. Like, I told Aaron at the beginning, I'm like, those are some creepy freaking woods there.
And I love how creepy they made them, and because this is like a folklore kind of movie, because I feel like fairy tales are not scary anymore, you know what I mean? They're things you tell to children, and it's about, and we've kind of like cleaned them up to not be like, but like fairy tales in their original forms, their point was to keep children out of the woods, because the woods were dangerous, and so they made the woods seem really fucking scary. Like, there are things in the woods that will boil you alive and eat you, or whatever, and we can kind of, I don't know how we got to the point where we can just say that, and it's like, oh yeah, you don't imagine it, but like, this is like, okay, let's show some horrific shit that could happen in the woods, and to keep children from running in there, and boy, I wouldn't want to run in the woods if I thought that was going to happen to me.
Yeah,
but,
and that's kind of the interesting thing, is just the world they set up, because I mean, there's like this whole like joking scene or whatever where one of the twin girls, Mercy, runs up to Thomason and Caleb and says like, you know, oh, I'm the witch, you know, I've, you know, read from the book of Satan, and just is proclaiming all of this stuff here, and it's very oddly specific.
Right, because I'm sure it's from fairy tales, from folklore, for them to be like, stay out of the woods and mind your mother. You know what I mean?
Yes, and I'm sure like that's like stuff they, you know, you would have believed that the parents had told them, because again, they're highly religious. I mean, even whenever they're making their migration towards their new plot of land, they're like seen praying to the sky and everything else. Like, they stop and they're just really into it. But that whole kind of fairy tale thing, I mean, it's like a really good period piece, I would argue there. So it's really good, despite how unnerving it is there. But I think that's just one of my favorite things is looking at this film, because the cinematography is just gorgeous. There were so many shots where I was like, oh, that's such a good shot. That's such a good. And I think, like, again, that's just Robert Eggers in general just being picky, because I've heard that he runs pretty strict, brutal sets there. Like, he's pretty dadgum serious with that. But, you know, it's just like one of those things. I think even though it's sometimes questionable, the stats that are seen, you can't argue with results, unfortunately, sometimes there.
Right.
Because there's so many shots where I was like, man, that's such a good shot there. Or they like do a close-up of the face there, the setting itself, just so many things. Like, if it wasn't for how disturbing this film would be, like, you know, I just see it as like pieces of art, kind of like the same like the lighthouse, especially the lighting they're able to get there. I mean, he just has a good eye for like painting these scenes that are just, I mean, he's embracing the art of cinema to its finest.
Oh yeah.
There. So it's good. It's good stuff. Let's see. Trying to think of anything else. The music that they have is so subdued that they have, but it fits so well.
Yeah, I feel like for most scenes, you know, it's just kind of, you know, very, very gentle in the background. But there are definitely moments where, like, even whenever they're just traveling, when they've first been banished in like the first 2 minutes in the movie, you just hear this like chanting. They have these chants that come in and out. This like, I don't know, this Latin sounding choir singing, and it has this really tense strings in the background, and like that's it. And it's it'll go from just being something in the background to all of a sudden it's just like loud in your face, even though nothing's happening on screen. It's just to make you a little unsettled. Yeah. So I thought they did a good job with that. It didn't feel hokey or forced at any point for me. I will say, you know, I could be really picky and, you know, say the sound design in some parts was a little, I don't know, off, a little too experimental, a little too trying too hard. But that's only if I'm being really picky.
Yeah. No, I I would totally agree. I mean, I'm trying to think if there's complaints with the film. I think for me, it's one of those things that whenever they try to go for something shocking, it pulls me out there as opposed to wrapping me in. And I think that was like kind of thing with the Lighthouse where it would do stuff to pull me out. But, you know, it might be one of those things that maybe on repeat viewings there, you just sync up to it more there. Because I know with the Lighthouse, watching it a second time there, you know, the shocking scenes melded a little bit better, and it just kind of felt more symbolic with its choices. I'm not sure if the shocking scenes in this one felt quite as symbolic. I felt like it was more kind of shock value.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah. And I feel like the shocking scenes are mostly describing things you would find in any English fairy tale, you know what I mean? Even super familiar fairy tales that we know of have been sanitized. You know, I feel like famous examples like Cinderella putting your foot in the slipper or whatever in the original fairy tale. Like one of the stepsisters cuts off her toes to like fit it in the glass slipper, and it fills with blood. It's just like they're gruesome ass stories. But yeah, it's you know, we've kind of cleaned them up today. So this guy really embodies the spirit of that. It's just a lot of those stories were just gruesome for gruesome's sake, and because they're meant to be scary, spooky stories. And I don't think there's anything deeper to some of these scenes that we see on screen except to show that, you know, this is what evil looks like in the woods.
Yes, I would most definitely agree with that. Aside from that, Aaron, is there anything else you want to talk about before diving into spoilers here?
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's kind of hard with this film there because a lot of it is just kind of spoiling it, because it's like we're gonna have to take a really deep dive into a lot of stuff here.
Like we could tell you about some of the moments that happen early on in the film, but we wouldn't want to subtract from you experiencing that for yourselves, because the whole point of this movie is ambiance and it throwing punches at you and stuff. So it is hard to talk about. Where in some other film, if I'm talking about the latest Fast and Furious or whatever, it's not going to spoil much whenever I tell you that they dropped a car from a helicopter, because you really got to just see that for yourself. You'd be like, oh, that's cool. But if we talked about some of the stuff that happened here, then it might be a bummer whenever you watch it. But...
Yes, yeah. Aaron, why don't you give your rating for The Witch?
The Witch.
The Witch.
Yeah, this is an experience. It's great. It's like but I would put this on par with like The Exorcism or something, where it's a really, really great film that's really focused on sort of mood and myth and legend, and is really disturbing to watch. But it's very artistic. I had a great time with it, even though that great time was behind me cringing for most of the movie in anticipation or disgust, depending on what was on the screen. But it set out to do something, and it did it really well. And while this isn't maybe quite at the Lighthouse level for me, it's like really, really close. It's like that same level of very good and very compelling. So this movie is an 8 out of 10 for me, I think. There's I feel like the plot itself, although there's nothing wrong with it, it's good. Could be injected with a little more interesting. It could still be a slow burn while perhaps having an ending or a progression that was, I don't know, a little more interesting. Give me a little spice along the road. I mentioned my little sound design comment. Really just kind of picky stuff is what keeps this from being a 9 or a 10 for me. But it's a really, really solid movie, and it's an 8 out of 10.
You know, I think it's funny because I'm pretty much on par with exactly the same words you said. It's like one of those things where I think this film is really great. I really do there. However, I prefer The Lighthouse a little bit more. Now, granted, it's not to dismiss this film. It's not like, it's good, but it's no Lighthouse or nothing like that. Because I think I rated, I can't remember what I rated The Lighthouse there. I want to say it was like an 8. as well there. I know you rated it a little bit higher than I did. Again, I'd have to go back and remember what I rated it, but I think both the Lighthouse and the Witch have potential of going up in rating. I might be a little bit underneath where you're at. It's a 7.5 for me, but like I said, like if I had to choose, probably would bump it up to an 8 because it's definitely higher than just a plain old 7 for me. The performances are really good. The environment, just the woods and everything themselves is good. I do think they jumped the shark a little bit there, going over the top with stuff there, where it, brings me out. And the ending, I wasn't a personal fan of, same with like kind of the Lighthouse again. If I had to choose which ending I liked, maybe the Lighthouse a little bit more, but we could talk more about it there. This is still a film that, if you're definitely wanting something unnerving, definitely right up your alley. And I feel like it's a really good period piece as well. Holy cow. Like, it's just, you totally buy that, you're living in this Puritan era there. So I think, I'm really glad I watched it. Not sure how soon I'll rewatch it, but I could see myself rewatching it in the future for sure, I would say. So, Aaron, I think I know what the first spoiler is going to be. And by the way, this is your chance to leave in case you don't want to get spoiled. But you bring some Tostino's scoops.
For this baby salsa?
Yes, the baby salsa. Because that's immediately what I thought of.
Yeah. It gets real disturbing real
Holy
quick.
crap.
What? That was like a pretty masterful scene, though, where Anya Taylor-Joy has the baby out in the woods and she's playing with it or whatever, and she's just has it. She's not even in the woods. She's at the edge of the wood, and she's just doing peekaboo. You know what I mean? And she just does peekaboo one time, and you can tell something's gonna happen, but you can't guess what, because it's just like focusing on her face and the baby's face and her face and the baby's face. You don't see anything else for a long time, and it's just like, okay, this game peekaboo's going on for a little long. What's gonna happen? And then, she does one last peekaboo, and the baby's just gone. I thought that was great. And you hear, like, rustling into the woods, and she's just distraught because her baby brother was just taken.
Yeah.
And she has no explanation for it. But then what comes after is equally compelling, because it could have easily just been really fucking cheesy or something. But goddamn, did Robert Eggers knock that out of the park with this creepy witch hustling into the woods with the baby. She finally got it. And you can tell she's all old and ugly and shit, and she lays the baby down, and that's when you get that full frontal nudity scene. It's it's tasteful. It's a blurred baby penis, but there's definitely some baby penis. And she's naked too, and you're like, what the fuck is going on here? And she like puts her grubby little hands on the baby, and then she's just cooking it up, and then she starts rubbing it all over her body, and it's just fucking disturbing. Yeah, it's quite a visceral scene, and I actually kind of love the execution of it, because they do that, and then really, if you like look at the film in retrospect now, they didn't do anything really remotely scary or with the witch or anything for like the next 30-45 minutes or something, but it's just that anticipation of like, what the fuck?
And whenever I watched the teaser had that part whenever Thomason is playing peekaboo with Samuel and then he disappears. That was in the teaser, so I knew that happened. But one of the little touches I love is whenever they do pan to the woods, and mention this is in the middle of the day. This isn't even at night or anything, which is like, especially when you shouldn't go to the woods. I mean, they usually herald don't go to the woods, period. But one of the things I love is that whenever they pan up, you only see like two plants like slightly rustling, as if something just ran past it at a immense speed. But no, that scene whenever they're really focusing on the baby, and like, you see like the withered hands like touching it, and then it just slowly brings a knife down and it cuts to black. It was definitely disturbing, because then you just see the backside of the witch, completely nude. And again, this is no kind of
This ain't fan service.
Yes, this ain't this ain't fan service whatsoever. It is pretty much just an old haggard woman there, just mixing up this baby chunky salsa there, and again, just rubbing it all over her body, and you don't really ever see the face or anything like that. And it like the entire time, both Aaron and I are just cringy, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, like,
and, you know, she's then taking like her staff and is like almost like humping it. It feels like just very, very, very sexually driven. And it doesn't show anything either there, which again, I think if they showed too much there, it definitely would have had a major cheese factor to it there. But it just dances on the line of just being so uncomfortable there. And again, they cut away and you just don't see another witch till Caleb runs into it there. Like, you have hints, like they talk about like witches and everything like that, but even then, that's the interesting thing. Their conversations are very much have little to no exposition of them just talking just to have exposition. I feel like it's just all conversations they would normally have as a family.
Right.
There, which is very well done because also, you know, their dialogue feels like it's also progressing a story, which again, this was written and directed by Robert Eggers, so he's very masterful at this. And, man... And that whole thing, too, like, you know, where they're just saying, like, you know, where's the baby? You know, where's the baby? And so then there's, like, that tension there, you know, kind of like, you know, please correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been a while since I've been in high school. But with the Crucible there, whenever they have, like, a strange happenstance there, their reasoning was witches.
Right.
You know, something like that. If something was out of the ordinary and everything there. And I think they even like talk about it there. But the thing that I find like most disturbing is like for how religious the family is. I believe the mother like just like, you know, Samuel is in hell right now.
Right. But
like, and I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, they're real religious extremists. Like even for, you know, the reason why Puritans were over in the colonies before America was founded as America while it was still colonies was for religious freedom because they were too fanatical for 16th century Europe or whatever at the time, which is to say they are very, very fanatical. And yeah, she was upset. She has a conversation with her husband about how the baby wasn't baptized and that's why he's in hell, you know. And he's trying to be like, no. And she's like, no.
Yeah, it's crazy just to hear that. And even just hearing like the words, my baby is in hell is like so nerve-wracking. And I feel like whenever it comes to religious tension, I feel like I felt a little bit more of that than even in The Exorcist. Granted, they definitely had it in The Exorcist there.
Right.
I think it's just like how far they go, because I don't know. To me, it's one of those things that, you know, thinking, because again, they never say like, oh, at least he's with the Lord right now. He did nothing wrong. No, they're like, nope, they're burning in hell.
Yeah, because that was their belief system that you like men are born in sin. Like we are sinners, and it's only through toil and hard work and following all these laws and praying daily on that you know the Lord could absolve us of our sins. And so that baby was born evil and wicked, and it did not get baptized yet. So it was it's going straight to hell according to them.
Well, and that's the thing I really like a ton, because you have, you know, 6 members. Six members of the family, and they're divided into thirds on where their religious spectrum is at there, where the mother and father are heavily religious. The older brother and sister there are kind of uncertain, like they want to believe in religion and everything else like that. And then the little ones are just so like, you know, whatever. Because again, they're little kids, they're not thinking critically. And so then they like to focus more on the scary monster stories and everything else like that. I mean, they're constantly like causing mayhem, especially with Black Phillip. They're just antagonizing Black Phillip.
How could we not introduce Black Phillip as a character?
Yeah, that was one of those things that I had trouble talking about there, because you don't really see him till way later in the film, whenever everything is already falling apart. Which I do want to give this quote. So Robert Eggers went on record with this exact quote. And Robert Eggers was putting out a #1 tip to screenwriters, and that was, don't put a goat in your film. And it says, you can't train a goat. The goat was a fucking nightmare. So Black Phillip apparently was a menace to society, even injuring Ralph Ineson to where he had to be hospitalized. Like, it was impossible to try to film this goat, and so he's pretty much like, I never want to work with goats again. That was awful.
I believe it, especially a billy goat. Like, it's they're territorial, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, have you ever been to a petting zoo with goats?
I have, and they are very stingy with food. I know. Whenever you try to feed them.
Yeah, no. The last time I went, because my niece was probably 3 at the time. There's this goat that would just follow us around the entire time because he knew we had food, and it would just butt our legs, just run into our legs with his horns over and over until we fed him. And just on the entire property for the entire 2 hours we were there, he was just like, you had to hide the food behind your back, and then you'd go bother someone else. But
oh my gosh, yeah.
Goats are assholes.
Yes, and Black Phillip is most certainly one in every single way you could possibly imagine. But it's so interesting just having these thirds there because, again, it also adds, I mean, it's just like real families in general there, The mother and father are trying to be grounded, in their beliefs there. The teenagers do kind of question the decisions of the parents, and the little kids are just menaces to society.
Yes, little hellions.
Yes, for sure. And so I feel like it's a perfectly divided dynamic amongst everything, because basically there's this whole conversation where, they live in one house and everything, and so they can hear the conversations going on through it, and even the moms are saying, oh, are you guys awake? Are you guys awake? And of course they're not saying anything. And so she's talking, and she's just lamenting about the loss of Samuel, and then just being like, I think we're going to have to kick our daughter out. We're going to have to let her go and everything. And the brother's like, no, we'll find food, we'll make this right there, because they tried to hunt for food earlier, both the father and the eldest son, and they tried to shoot a rabbit, and you could tell this rabbit is mystical, the way it looks. It's no normal looking rabbit. Bad things happen, whenever he fires, it shoots sparks into his eye or something like that.
Backfires because it's an old flintlock rifle or whatever, and it he burns his eye.
And so they decide, oh, I'll go out and get food and everything. So it's both on Taylor and Harvey riding out to the woods there to try to get food, because she's also like, no, I'm not letting you go alone. I'm going with you there.
Right.
And so then it's whenever they run into the rabbit again, mischief is afoot there, because the horse they're riding kicks Thomason off there. Meanwhile, Caleb decides to chase the dog who's chasing after the rabbit there. And lo and behold, nothing is going to go well whenever a dog runs headfirst into the woods. This isn't going to be like, oh, the dog is alive, because spoiler.
It got the rabbit.
Yes, exactly. No, the dog got messed up. It was gutted.
Yeah.
There.
You get to see an eviscerated dog if you watch this movie, so look forward to that.
Yes, for sure. Animal lovers, be ready, basically.
And it's obviously heavily implied that the witch is the rabbit. She can shapeshift into a rabbit.
Yes, definitely. Especially with its glowing amber eyes it has going on. That thing is mystical.
Yeah, and then Caleb follows the rabbit to the witch's den or whatever.
Ooh, and this is one of the things that I thought was well done, because they had made a point that, Caleb, whenever he first, wakes up and he looks over at Thomason, who's sleeping, and she has the top of her blouse a little bit open, so you see a little bit of her cleavage, and as creepy as it is, the brother is looking everything, and I'm just looking, I'm like, okay, is this just kind of a haha boys, am I right?
Yeah, I was worried from that first scene, because I was like, there's no way they just put that in for no reason, so this has to be something, and if this is an incest plot line, I'm like, that's just another element of disturbing that I'm not interested in.
Same. I was so worried about the incest. just that, because we already saw a witch, hump a baby salsa soaked pole there.
Yes.
That I was just like, oh, I am not prepared for this there. But it happens once, then it happens twice right by the river there. So you're like, is this just a joke they're doing there, or is it going to lead to something really disturbing? It is. Fortunately, it's not incestual.
Yes, yeah. Woo,
there.
Thank God for that.
Yeah, because I think that's just one of the interesting aspects, because you get to like this hut there, and instead of seeing like that old haggard witch there, slumping out there, it's like this beautiful fan servicey witch, that's pale and alluring, and is also wearing a corset to make sure that her
Fat titties.
I wasn't gonna say that. I was.
Her pale bosom.
That'll work. Yes,
bowling
very,
balls.
very, prominently displayed and advertised.
Yes.
Like, it just clicked, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I really like the way they did that there,
Because it showed that, Caleb was a young boy who was interested in a big sexo, but he's in a religiously impressed family, and also there's nobody that he sees besides his own family. So he's weirdly lusting after his own sister, and then, there just happens to be a big titty woman in the woods.
Yeah,
Good for Caleb.
And again, you buy that Caleb would do this, and the way he walks, like he has like this lighting effect where like his eyes are heavily shadowed there.
Yeah,
so
like
he almost,
he's already bewitched. Yeah.
yes, like he's bewitched there, and so he brings it in, and then she allures him in for a kiss there, and then whenever she grabs the back of his head, you see that it's like very much a withered looking hand.
Yeah, that was a creepy hand.
Yes, very creepy hand.
You have to make it pretty creepy to make like the most creepy part of that be the hand and not the grown woman kissing a child.
yes, very, very much so. Very, very, very much so, because that definitely could have been seen as.
I was like, listen, I've already seen like naked old lady with baby salsa. Like,
yes,
her kissing a kid is not as disturbing as what she's about to do to it. I'm sure.
Yes, fortunately, Caleb looks old and barely old enough, just on a line, just barely just turned 18 today.
Maybe his actor is, but he.
Well, you know what I mean.
Right.
That was the thing. I'm like, he's 18. He's 18. He's 18 in real life. He's 18. He's 18.
In real life.
No, he didn't look 18.
He seemed like 14 or something.
Yes, 14, something like that. But yeah, so, and I think that's like an interesting aspect that they did, because again, especially aching in the religious tones there, they're talked about like, stuff that you want to do that makes you feel good is a sin there.
Right.
And so, I think just the fact that, it's a witch that, is pretty much the antithesis of being a person ridden in sin there, is using something that is deemed sinful there, sex, because sex is only good whenever it's good.
Procreation.
Procreation. There is no enjoyment. It's like, well, I believe that'll do. Have a nice day. We will pray to God that we don't go to hell. And I think that's just such an interesting aspect there, that they've riddled something that could have been seen as a stupid gag throwaway thing amounted to this, because he has that sexual need there where he's just like, oh man, to be with a woman there, and then lo and behold, a witch is there, again, just luring him in with a lustful eye and everything. And so I felt like that was well done. The other thing that I thought was well done is the fact that Caleb is seen pretty much naked back at the house, because he's gone for a long period of time, and I thought it was just going to be one of those things where everyone's plucked away one at a time there, and you don't know what happens. But no, I mean, you pretty much see him whenever Thomason goes out, because I think she like hears something outside, and she's checking, I think it was the goat, right?
Yeah, she's with the goats for some reason, and then she hears a thud and walks out in the rain, and I think she forgot to lock up the goats or something. She's like doing a chore for her mom in the middle of the night, and then there he be, Mr. Caleb. Yeah,
just completely naked and just kind of leaning against a gate there, and you're just like, holy cow, what is going to happen to him?
Yeah.
And surprisingly, like his whole thing, there's really not a lot of over the top stuff because I didn't know what crazy stuff I was going to see. But again, Robert Eggers just plays it straight there, where we're just kept at the edge because again, whenever he first comes in, he's just like, you could tell he's like gravely ill and everything, just lying there. And I think that's just one of the good things this film does, is that it sprinkles omens throughout the entire freaking thing. Because you have like the harvest where, the dad is like, yeah, harvest unfortunately didn't turn out good this year there.
Yeah, there's some sort of rot. They said the corn was rotted.
Yes, and then there's also the chicken egg whenever she's only able to find one, and then rolls out, and whenever it cracks open, it's like a bloodied fetus of a chicken there. Like pretty much bad omens all around, bad juju.
And she milks the goat later, and it's milking blood.
Yes, yeah, definitely a lot of bad omens, which I think adds more to the tension, because again, you get to this scene where Caleb is like lying there, and then whenever the family is just trying to figure out what to do about the situation and why Caleb, was naked and why he disappeared. Because that's one thing I will say, that's another good thing about this family dynamic, because they easily could have had the parents be just completely antagonistic to where you're like, okay, I don't like them at all. But there's like multiple scenes because whenever the father and Caleb are going out hunting there, the mother is angry and upset that they went out to the woods. Or like, oh, William, why did you take him out to the woods? That's dangerous and everything. And then Caleb covers him. He's like, oh, I was wanting to show him an apple tree I found, but it wasn't an apples on the tree.
I couldn't find any.
And so he covers him. And then he proceeds to cover for Thomason as well whenever the mother starts interrogating her, being like, you were the last one to see Caleb. What did you do to him? What did you do? And so I really love that the father kind of takes up for his children there. Like, he is a loving father, despite it basically drawing the ire of his spouse.
Right. And he also admits later in the film that he was wrong and he sinned for not saying the truth sooner and letting his son cover for him and stuff. So.
Yeah. And so the whole scene is super tough. And again, it's one of those things that whenever he's pretty much screaming at the top of his lungs, seizing and everything, and everyone trying to figure out what's going on, that the kids are immediately like, oh, it's Thomason. She told us she was a witch earlier there. And she's like, I was trying to get you to stop, I was just joking.
Right.
It was just a joke there. But that's kind of how the Crucible started. It was just panic about stuff. So they start finger pointing and everything. So I thought that was a good inclusion in the film as well.
Right.
With that. And that whole scene is disturbing because even then you see he's trying to spit up something. He's screaming my stomach, my bones and everything. And he spits out, I couldn't even tell what it was.
It's an apple.
It was an apple?
Yeah.
Okay, it was so bloodied. And
it was also small because that's just what apples used to be like before we bred them to be big old things that we eat
big,
today.
chunky,
but if you've ever
dummy,
seen
thick apples.
If you've ever seen a crab apple, that's used to be what all apples look like. Yeah.
And so he spits that up there, and they have a really good scene that whenever he's struggling there, that they do the one thing that they know best, pray. And so then it's the mother and father and then Thomason join in prayer there, and then they're talking to the little kids come on guys, join in prayer. And they're like, we forgot. It's how did you forget? You know the prayer and everything. And so then they start seizing as well, and it's just oh my gosh, everything is going down in a hell in a handbasket. I think that's what I was trying to say. And you think that's going to be it, because finally he stops seizing and everything, chanting these words and everything, and then all of a sudden you see him a light, and then he starts speaking. He's I feel the Lord's light. I feel his kisses upon me and everything. And you just feel him elated with joy, which is so funny because the actor who plays Caleb does such a good job just being so joyful that I buy him being joyful. And it's so creepy to me, given the context of everything. It's like, oh, I don't like this. And then as he slowly, like, brings himself down, he just dies right then and there. And the mother is just completely done. She is super done. She's pretty much on the full bandwagon of Thomason's a witch.
Right.
You know, that's the only thing that makes sense there.
Right.
She messed around with Satan, and now she has doomed us all, basically. And it puts everybody in a pickle there, because even the father just tries to get her to admit, like, look, just, you know, did you mess around with Satan? Did you read the book?
Yeah.
You know, doing that there. And, you know, I love the way that they did that, because, again, he's trying to be, like, a good father without just immediately being awful there. And, you know, Thomason is just trying to constantly just tell him, look, I told you I'm not. And it's so interesting, because the scene where he's trying to ask if she's a witch and everything, and he starts getting angry about the situation, about her not confessing there, that she turns it around on him and starts, you know, talking about how it's his fault that we're all out here, that could have been out on a colony. And both Thomason and the mother do that to him. And again, it's just one of those things where it feeds on his insecurities of being a failure of a father there. And so there's just a lot of tension that's built in throughout there that makes it a very effective scene there that draws Thomason away from her parents, alienating her.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I was like really rambling on there a little bit.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a sign of how much there's to talk about.
Yeah, there's a lot. And so ultimately, what's the solution? Board up the kids in the goat shack.
Right, because Tomlinson claims in desperation for her to not get, you know, cast out into the woods to fend for her own or whatever. She says it's the twins. It's the twins that are the witch, actually, because they whisper to Philip Black the whole time, and they speak with the goat, and goats are, of course, you know, symbols of Satan or whatever.
Yeah,
so,
and
so that's what she says, and the father believes her enough that she gets back in, and then the father can't decide who is the devil, so he just locks all three of them in the pin with the goat.
yeah, it's. Whew. Yeah, it's rough. It's definitely rough there. And again, you know, it's like all of the siblings are in the shack. I mean, minus Caleb, who is properly buried out by a tree in the backyard.
But is he? Because he comes back later.
Yeah, that's the disturbing thing. And again, they have just really drawn themselves. Both the parents have started to part ways emotionally there. And whenever she wakes up in the middle of the night there, because she hears something, and then, you know, again, that silver chalice appears there in the background, and as she turns, she sees Caleb, you know, looking fine and dandy there, just holding Samuel there, and of course she's elated and everything, and she's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you all are okay and everything. And, you know, Caleb's like, we've missed you so much there.
Yeah, she's like, I should wake your father. And they're like, no, let him sleep.
Yeah, you know it's just bad. And he's like, there's a book you should look at.
Yeah.
There. And you just know, you're like, oh, man. And so during this time, you have this creepy scene going on. And then all of a sudden, in the good old goat shack there, you see that the witch has returned there, and I think she's eating the white goat there or something. She's smacking on something.
Yeah, she's either eating it, which is likely because in the following morning scene you see like all the goats have been like had their stomachs eaten out, or she's like suckling its teat. I couldn't tell because it was one of the milking goats.
Yeah,
and she was down in that region. So I don't know. Whatever it was disturbing.
Yes.
And then she turns around and laughs, and the children scream.
And it's just super chaotic. And then whenever you go back to the mother, you see that she's just like kind of laughing with joy there as she sits there in the chair because she's sort of breastfeeding Samuel, you know, because he's hungry.
'Cause he's hungry, yeah.
And
He's been
then
away for a while.
and then you cut to her sitting in the rocking chair in the fireplace, laughing as a crow is nipping at her nip.
Yeah, like a buzzard eating some carcass is the way that it's feeding on her teeth.
Yes, it's a lot of shock. It's a lot of shock to go through there, to say the least.
It's an excellent image. It's just also really disturbing.
Yes, absolutely. One thing I did want to point at before this all happened there, they have this focus where William is chopping wood constantly. He doesn't say anything. He chops wood and everything. And I'm sure there's probably like a reason as to why they included it there. I think it's missed on me there. I still liked it. I felt like it was well placed. But the one scene where it's like the last time you see him chopping wood, it's like raining outside there, and he just breaks down and he just is crying out to the heavens, basically. He's like, please spare my children, redeem them, I'm the one that led them wrong. And just going through this grief because he feels like my kids have messed up somehow, like whether they mess with the devil or anything, please spare them, please. And it's such a powerful scene. Like Ralph Ineson does a spectacular job with like his dialogue there. And I think there's even one scene where he like eats the dirt or something there, and then you see the dirt dribbling down from his beard. It's like, holy crap. Yeah.
He's talking about how he's not worthy, and that's when he's yelling to God or whatever, and how he would sooner taste the soil of your earth or whatever than that's how unworthy he is. But
then we wake up to the morning.
Yeah.
Where he's waking up there, leaning over the missus, which I assume she was probably going to be dead in the bed with like a hole in her chest or something like that. No, she has like a little blood where her nip is, and you see her open her eyes uncomfortably quick there. And as the father walks out, it sees a scene of all the boards being busted out open, Thomason unconscious on the ground there, bloodied goats everywhere. And he's just like,
the twins dead, I'm pretty sure. They don't really show it, but
I think that was just also, Robert didn't want to go too far in that aspect, like showing, like, because you don't even see the baby get stabbed or anything, which I'm not complaining about. Trust me, I am not like, there could have been a lot more baby stabbing. I believe that. I just
wanted to see a little baby foot in the salsa, honestly.
Yes, exactly. I wanted to see the process of
how's the sausage made.
Oh my god. And the father's walking out, and then all of a sudden Black Phillip runs up and guts him with one of his horns there. Which they alluded to a little bit early, because the kids are like picking at Black Phillip constantly, and he's like struggling to try to get Black Phillip in. So he's a strong goat.
Right. Well, you stand and like look into a charge at him or whatever, and the children don't realize it, and so he has to wrestle the goat back in the pit. But I think that's what all the chopping wood scenes was leading up to, and the goat scenes too, because he's chopping wood with his axe or whatever, and I thought, man, he's gonna like behead the witch with the axe or something. But it comes to the point where Philip, he gores him, and he gets all mad, and he stands up, and he grabs the axe for a second, like he's gonna kill this goat, you know what I mean? But then he drops it and and tries to handle it gently again, and gets gored again into the wood place and dies. So I feel like it's just like I don't know that I've really cracked the code on it, but I feel like it's got to be some symbol for like how he is as a father and how he failed because he wasn't stern enough or something. Or
I feel like maybe the thing I'm only able to pick up on, and again, don't think that I'm just like, oh, you fool, Aaron, I figured it out. I feel like it's just one of those things where he was just like getting ready to fight and everything. And then, and the fact that he doesn't say anything whenever he puts the axe down, maybe it's just him accepting that this is meant to happen. Like, this is his punishment there for everything that he's done. But even then, he doesn't say anything. He just sees that he does it, and he just tries to handle the goat, and then the goat wrecks him there. And so then, you see Thomason get up and just run over to her father. Her father's dead. And of course, the mother walks out, and then she's like, so it is you. You're the only one that could have caused all this, because it's not me causing this. This is you. This is all you. And so she's like completely like gone. I mean, she was already pretty dadgum close to, especially after losing Caleb there, with how strict it is, to where she's like, I am going to kill you. Like, you are evil incarnate. And, you know, to, like, Thomas's defense there, she doesn't get a lot of options. It's either she dies here or she has to fend off from her mother there. Because, you know, she finds a spade and it's like slashes her face a little bit. And then that just makes her mother even mad, to where she tries to go for the chokehold, to where Thomasin has to go and jab her with the spade. And it's a gut-wrenching scene there. Just seeing a mother try to kill her own daughter.
Right, and then a daughter kill her own mother in self-defense. Yeah.
The whole scene is just messed up there, but it's like, it's just been a rough time for this fam. It's been a rough time. And, you know, you see that scene and she's just there and you could tell she's like upset. Surprisingly, I don't remember her like, you know, doing like that dramatic outburst cry or anything like that.
No,
she's hugely upset.
She's like numb, yeah.
Yeah, I think numb's the best way to describe it. And all she could do is just walk in, take off a lot of her clothes there, put on like a little cloak, and just fall asleep on the table. And
she wakes up in his night and the door's still open. And
yeah, and that leads to the scene where I was like, oh, I don't like where this is going.
Yeah.
It was very much a vibe of, oh, Robert, what are you doing, man? Because whenever she like walks out and sees Black Phillip just staring at her, and I'm just like, because I'm pretty much sure by this point we had figured out like, okay, Black Phillip is Satan there, or like something, some agent of evil. And so then like Black Phillip walks into the shack there, and then she follows him, which I'm not sure if it's just because she's just mentally like done, or if she's just like, I can't defeat you, I surrender, or something like that. But or she's just trying to confirm that it is something not of this world. I'm not sure the reasoning there, but then whenever she like tries to speak to Black Phillip there, Black Phillip's voice is so unnerving there. It's just like a whisper there, which I guess it was done, he was played by Daniel Malik there. But yeah, he's pretty dadgum unnerving. And again, it's not even traditional like Satan voice of like, oh yeah, I'm the devil, you know. It's just like, you know, write your name in the book. You know, something like that. And it's so uncomfortable because then you see like, you know, a shadowy figure walk around there, and she has like a tiny bit of hesitation, but not a lot. He's like, remove yourself.
Yeah, she's like, I can't put your name in the book, and he like puts his little cloven hoof hand on her shoulder, and she does it.
Yeah, it's so unnerving there, which
it's like sexual in like a
very
kind of way.
I'm not gonna lie, Aaron, I was mortally afraid. I'm like, if this goat humps her, I'm going to be traumatized for life.
Was in the same boat. I was like, if I see the goat rape scene, I would almost rather see the incest.
I would, yes, that is exactly how I feel. But again, I feel like Robert Eggers, despite being able to have these horrific, shocking scenes, at least has enough decency not to go that far. Because I think, again, it just, I don't think I can handle it personally, and that's a personal. I understand that's a me problem, that I don't want to see goats humping women.
Yeah. That's a many people problem.
Okay, thank the Lord. Thank the Lord. I was worried I was the only one with that fear.
I mean, it's one of those things where he's really got to balance like the accuracy of the folklore to like what people actually want to see depicted in cinematic film. You know what I mean? Because like if you tried to make accurate films of a lot of Greek myths or something, you'd be seeing a lot of weird incest and baby eating and raping of people by various beasts that is actually just Zeus. You know what I mean? So like that's just what myths and legends were like. Because the world was fucked up and they wrote fucked up things. Luckily, we have a little bit of a shield from that kind of thing in our society today, and I don't want to watch a goat rape a woman, and I don't have to now. So
bless you, Aaron.
I'm glad we didn't see that.
Yes, I'm glad too. I am curious because I would love your interpretation of the scene, Aaron, on why Thomasin finally decided to just sign the book.
I feel like it's probably a couple things. I mean, one is obviously trauma. She's lost everything, and yet she survives. So I feel like the witch was probably, or Satan, or whoever, was probably kind of trying to recruit her anyways to be a witch. Because, like, why waste a nice young woman whenever she could be an agent of Satan or whatever? But I feel like the other part is, like, there's, like, those hints of wavering in her religion, you know what I mean? This speckled throughout the movie, and it's, even though she's tried her best to be a good, God-fearing Christian, it seems like to her, at this point in her arc, she's maybe, like, the God thing isn't working. Maybe I do go with the devil because maybe that's my only option now. So maybe she was just like, it just shows her being successfully tempted to the side of evil or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's a really good interpretation that I totally agree with. The only other bullet point I would add in addition to that is also just sort of the repulsion she had from how religiously charged her family was, because it's because of her father's religious beliefs they were even dragged out to this godforsaken land.
Right.
It's because of these charged religious beliefs that she quickly became the antagonist in front of her parents' eyes and her siblings' eyes there.
And her very religious parents were the ones that said, you're a witch, and she had done nothing wrong, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where she's just like, I want to escape the pain or anything like that. That's about the only thing I could think of. But I think your bullet points as well of, again, just feeling like, this religion thing, it does nothing. Because, again, you don't get any sort of Holy Spirit or presence. It's all dark.
And that's, I mean, honestly, in line with their belief system, that God is a wrathful, angry God, and you have to beg for his mercy or you're not going to get it. And she saw that her family didn't get it the whole time. They were doing all the things the good Christians should do, and what did it result? They got banished from the town, and her whole family died. And so she's like, well, I guess I'll go off to be a witch then.
Yeah, and it's really gut-wrenching, which is surprising, because again, it's like I look at that, I'm like, man. And again, I've talked about this on the podcast. I don't expect all movies to have happy endings there. But whenever they go for a bad ending, I am a little trepidatious on how they handled it. I think this is one of the better bad endings I have seen in films there. I think The Lighthouse is also kind of the same. However, I will say, like, after, it's like remove the shawl and then you see her walking into the woods there and you see the goat following behind there, I almost, and this could be just me, I felt the exact same way about The Lighthouse. I wish it would have cut off there.
Where she just walks into the woods and then it doesn't show the rest.
Yes, like it just shows her disappearing into the woods, the goat falling behind, and it just goes black there. I would have liked that personally. I don't feel like the ending ruins it though, but it does draw me out a little bit. I'm like, okay, kind of like the same light spoilers with The Lighthouse, but I assume if you're listening at this point, you probably have seen The Lighthouse, probably big Robert Eggers fan. I would have rather preferred the movie end after, Robert Pattinson looks at the light there and then falls down the stairs, blacks out. But I will say I did like his ending where it shows, like, again, it's like doing that, Greek mythology reference there where the birds are picking at his body and everything at the end. I even though I am like about it, I still like it there. It's just uncertain. The thing is like you have like this tense scene where she's walking through the woods naked, everything, and the goat's following behind Black Phillip there, and then you just see like this huge bonfire and several witches like just dancing basically. That's a base. I mean, I would call it dancing, but even then it's like almost like they're being possessed dancing. Like they're just flailing their arms around the fire and everything. And you could tell they're like covered in like little, like, it looks like tattoos or symbols, something like that, and blood.
Felt like they were like, dirty and bloody. But...
Yes, dirty and bloody. That could have also been it. But as soon as they, she's gazing at the scene and seeing exactly what she has going on, and then the witches start like levitating and floating around in the circle there, I'm like, okay, this is probably the most campy part of the film.
Yes,
Mhm.
but I do think it was like, as far as horror movie camp goes, like really light in that sense.
True.
It was a little cheesy, but it was.
Mhm.
I thought it was actually a really good way to show probably the cheesiest like aspect of witches or whatever, which is that they ride on broomsticks or whatever and float around, because like a couple of them had like sticks that they were like kind of straddling as they floated or whatever,
Yeah.
and that could have been really cheesy, but it was only like a little bit of cheese for me.
You know, I just realized this, but Mercy, whenever she's claiming to be a witch and everything at the beginning of the film, she also had a stick in between her legs there. So I think I just got 2 and 2 together there, that it wasn't even a broom, it was just a stick there.
Right.
But the only thing I will say I liked about that scene there is, you know, same thing, like I like the ending of The Lighthouse because it was just back to that referential, like, Greek mythology finding the fire of Olympus there. Is the fact that you see Thomasin just get elated, like she just starts smiling there, like she's just feeling this over sense of like, this feels so good right now.
Right, like not only like Caleb did, but like the witch was, and the only time you see her face, you know, where she's laughing in the goats or whatever, the kind of evil witch laugh, that it derives from genuine elation and not just campy stuff, you know.
And so also could add to the witch's cackle there.
Right.
That's good points. And, you know, it ends with the final scene showing Thomasin several feet in the air floating like at the top of the tree chops there with her arms extended. Makes me curious if it's supposed to be also referential to like the crucifix pose.
Oh yeah, but
Maybe.
and also just in the beginning of the movie when they're traveling out and they kind of stop and they have their arms up like to pray, like to pray to God or whatever. But like
that's also good.
Right, but like nothing happens then, obviously. But then when she signed her name in the Book of Satan or whatever, that's when she feels the power. But...
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's a really good film. It's just some of the points that, you know, the reason why it does get marked so low is because, again, I feel like they do go, they go a little bit too far for me there on some points there, but like the strong performances, the environment, the tone and everything, and even like kind of like the deep messages there. I mean, so far, I really like Robert Eggers as a director. I've only seen 2 films from him, but I would definitely be curious to see a lot more of his films, because so far, I mean, he's been 2 for 2 where I'm like, yeah, I like the films. I like the films. I don't know how soon I would rewatch this, as I've mentioned previously, because again, you know, it's not the hardest film I've had to watch. I've watched films that are both hard because they're either horrifically bad, like just awful movies, or just horrifically disturbing and everything, and I'm like, I really don't want to kick back and watch this, but it's definitely worth a watch, especially if you're really into that Crucible sort of era there.
Oh yeah,
you know,
I think it did a fantastic job. So often whenever you see that era of, you know, colonized pre-United States, it's like, you know, it feels like some TV movie shit or like some bad TV series stuff, and it's just campy and like, oh, my name's Goody Margaret, I'm gonna milk the cows now, or whatever. This feels so like gritty and real. It's I felt like it was really well done for just as a period piece outside of any other genre. But
yes, I would definitely agree. It's definitely one of the I struggle to say this because obviously I feel like I always need to watch more. It's one of my favorite religiously charged horror films there. I would argue it's something that just hits that right level. And again, like, I ended up liking this better than Exorcist, which is no diss at The Exorcist, because I still, you know, revered that film for all the things it did, especially for the time period and everything like that. This one, just for me, just really just hit home, especially with how freaking strong the performances are, especially major kudos points to Anya Taylor-Joy and Ralph Ineson. I think they were definitely just really, really good. So that's my thoughts. Aaron, any other closing thoughts you want to give about the VVitch?
nope.
Okay.
Y'all make some salsa and watch it.
Oh God, I can never look at salsa again. Oh man. So how about we talk about the next film?
Yeah.
So the next film I was thinking about, I wasn't sure what I wanted to watch. So I kind of figured out like in the last few minutes before we started recording, because I was like watching this and I was like, man, I need to watch something a little bit lighter. So this next film I have not seen before either. And it is most certainly a lighter film. I can't imagine it being more deeply disturbing than this film.
Gosh darn, I would hope not.
And I don't think you have probably ever heard of this, because I hadn't heard of it either. But it's a film from, oh man, I don't want to get this wrong here, because then I'll sound like a complete clod here. But yes, the film is from 1980.
Oh, okay.
And it is a horror film. And I don't have any good hint, but it's one word, and it follows the term "see you later."
Alligator?
That's it. That's the name of the movie we're going to be watching. Yeah, so thank you all so much for listening to this episode, and we'll see you all again next time when we're popping the scary with Alligator.
Oh, see you then.
I will. Crocodile. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube, Castbox, or iTunes platforms to stay up to date when new episodes drop. To see what Aaron and I are up to, check out our respective Twitter accounts. For me, it is @ColeKirkVA, and for Aaron, it is @AnimalGameDev. Thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. We'll speak to you all again next time when we're popping the scary.